Before we begin the meeting, just per board policy, I want to make an announcement. We do have 4 speakers tonight speaking to board agenda items. Just remind our speakers and anyone here in the public, you have 5 minutes to speak to the topic, because if you're speaking to an agenda item, a board member may or may not ask you a question or have dialogue with you, but it is up to the discretion of a board because it is pertaining to agenda items. And we want to apologize to anyone that was unable to get on the sign-in sheet. We do have a policy of 20 minutes designated to the comment section, so we filled those up with the current speakers that we have. And we have Lindsay Scottney will be our first speaker. Then we'll have Mark Garley, Darren Lindsay, and Lois Breedlove will be our speakers. Call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Ms. Roulette?
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell?
Here.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item will be the statement by our board vice president, Mr. Steve Majors.
As we begin this meeting, let us pause for a 60-second moment of silence to reflect, meditate, pray, or engage in any other silent activity. Thank you.
Next item will be the Pledge of Allegiance, led by our board clerk, Mr. Jerry Denton.
Please stand. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Next item will be the formal adoption of the agenda. Any discussions, questions?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Roulette?
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item will be the approval of the December 9th board meeting minutes. Discussion, questions?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Roulette?
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, summary and awards. Dr. Dunlop.
Yes, tonight, it's just appropriate this evening that we have this difficult conversation ahead of us, that it's a perfect example of how these 5 individuals sitting up here with us tonight are board members that give selflessly day after day to our school district with no pay. I think a lot of people think that they come up here with and they're paid for their service. They are not. As citizen leaders, individual school board members face complex and oftentimes demanding challenges. Yet few people fully understand the scope and far-reaching implication of board members' responsibilities. Their job is to establish a vision for an education program, design a structure to achieve that vision, and ensure schools are accountable to the community and strongly advocate for continuous improvement in student learning. The time spent in board meetings represents just a tiny fraction of the hours school board members spend leading their districts. They attend seminars and training sessions to keep abreast of the latest in educational developments. Their love for learning, concern, and caring for students, staff, and community drives board members' desire to lead so students can achieve. In recognition of their dedicated service, January is designated as School Board Recognition Month. This is a time to show appreciation and recognize how local leaders work together to provide a better future for our children. Personally, I could not choose a group of better people to serve with. They are amazing, and they really, truly make it an honor to serve this community. You see just a little bit of their heart, but they really do this because they love this school district and they love this community. It's not about recognition. It's about doing what's right for our kids, and for that, it's an honor to serve with them. So thank you.
Thanks,
you.
Dr. Dunlap.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And the administration. Love working with you guys.
Well, we have wonderful leaders in our district. We have wonderful kids. We have wonderful parents, even though we have to make the difficult decisions. So it's as tough as tonight may be, or a future night may be, it's still no other place we'd rather be. So, and we will survive, and we'll continue to make great decisions as a board for the best interest of our community and our school district. So we thank each and every one of you for caring as well. And we want double the money we got last year. Next item, number 7. Ms. Peterson.
Yes, I come to you tonight with a recommendation for your approval for a principal to serve at our new elementary. To say this individual exemplifies all of our core values. I know all of our principals embrace the responsibility of their calling, but I will say he embraces the responsibility daily. He is probably almost one of our most student-focused, relationship-driven principals that we have, and he is ready to accept this challenge. Just to bring together a new building with and build relationships and build a new community and an identity for this building. So we would like to recommend to you tonight Mr. Nate Hutchings. He's been in, yes, we are excited. He comes to us, he first started his career in Missouri as a classroom teacher. He came to Broken Arrow and was a teacher at Country Lane Intermediate, and at the time, Jill Whitaker was a principal there, and she got moved over to Oliver and saw the excellence in him and wanted him to serve as an administrator with her at Oliver Middle School, and from there, he became the principal at Arrowhead. I know that Arrowhead is going to be crushed, that he is leaving, but he's not leaving us. So I would like to recommend Mr. Nate Hutchings for your approval.
Any questions or discussion?
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Miss Roulette,
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes.
Yes, and all right, and Mr. Hutchings is here if you would like to introduce your family.
I will. First off, I'm very honored. Thank you very much for this. My wife, Leah, my oldest daughter, Faith, she's a 6th grader at Childers. Lainey is 3rd grader, Spring Creek, and Noah's 1st grader, Spring Creek. And we've been in the district now for 7 years, and I couldn't think of a better place to have my kids and have my career. So thank you very much.
Congratulations. Next item will be the public comment section. And just a reminder, you will have 5 minutes since it is an agenda item. And Mr. Denton will keep time, and he will notify you of 1 minute so you don't get cut. We don't want to be rude or cut anybody off, but to give everyone the necessary time, respectful of their time speaking. So first speaker will be Ms. Lindsay Scottney. Did I say that right, Scottney? Yes.
Hi, thank you so much, first of all, for all that you do. This is a tough decision and tough conversations for everybody to have, and I'm happy to be a part of, a group of people that care this much about our kids and about our neighborhoods. It's a blessing of a problem to have, and we're happy for that, so thank you for that. We specifically, this whole thing with the change, especially the change that happened January 7th, was very confusing for all of the neighbors. There was a unanimous decision made on December 9th after a very, very long committee. They made a unanimous decision, or everybody here made a unanimous decision to make this happen, and then suddenly it changes. So, it brings up a lot of questions. One of the questions that is absolutely essential is what caused such a change, first of all, and was this one of the plans that was considered on the origin? If it was, why was it that that wasn't chosen by anybody, since we had a unanimous decision in a different direction? I think it bears the question, if nobody chose it the first time, why has it been changed so quickly in less than a month? You know, that doesn't make sense for a lot of us. We've all kind of talked, and we don't know how this affects the capacity issues. I'll be honest, we've done a lot of research. My husband and I own a business, recently moved to Broken Arrow last February, specifically looking at the school that we ended up in, which is Highland Park. Now we're going to be moved. So we've spent the last week trying to figure out capacities and things like that, and I'll be honest, it's not super transparent to get that information, so we would love to have input about how this changes those numbers, because from what all of us can see and having done our research, it looks like this doesn't help Highland Park's numbers, it hurts them. It seems to make things more crowded, and if we're missing something, we'd like to know that, but these are, you know, those kind of concerns are seriously problematic, as well as the fact that in January, or in December, one of the reasons that you cited choosing that option was because it didn't split neighborhoods. You said that that was a priority, that it kept those neighborhood communities together, and then less than a month later, that wasn't the case, as you're splitting a very large community apart, I'm sorry. We would like to know how this changes the growth of the 200 to 300 students per year that Broken Arrow schools are expecting. If we get targeted for this, is our neighborhood going to be further chopped up as the growth that you're expecting happens? You know, we don't want to constantly be on the chopping block and have our kids constantly be on the chopping block, but this is the second time that we've had these issues with our neighborhood area, with busing, with transportation, all of those problems. We have people that aren't allowed to get picked up by a bus because they're less than a mile from the school, but now are going to be moved to 4 miles away. All of these things are concerning, and we just don't quite understand where the mindset is or what happened to the whole purpose of the planning committee. Does that make sense? I mean, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how it feels. The other major issue is Mr. Hanneman specifically cited conditions of the road as one of the reasons the decision was made. The problem that we have with that, if there's a safety issue, we want to know. Specifically because this doesn't actually change the road that's being taken for the freshmen or for the high schoolers. So is there a condition of the road issue that would make such a drastic change from 1 month to the other? Is there an actual condition with the road? If so, then why is it safe for our older kids to drive that route and keep that route? So is there a condition of the road issue, or is there not? I mean, all of these things, we just would really like to have some answers. We would like to understand what the process is moving forward better and have more transparency on why these changes are being made when there's unanimous decision. Does anybody have any questions, or could anybody answer any capacity questions, or does anybody have those numbers or how it'll be affected, number of students moved in and out of Highland Park, off the top of your head? It's okay.
Well, I can tell you this, just from the board perspective, and we don't draw the maps, we approve the maps.
Of course.
Okay, so our input into that, I mean, that's why we have the committee
Right.
to regroup and have those conversations for that.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
so I don't think some of us can answer those questions because we're not involved in that process of developing of the boundaries.
Yes.
So
I mean, that's I'm speaking, you know, to whomever is available and can answer from all of the different groups. So I mean,
We're
if
at
anybody
26
has,
seconds.
thank you. If anybody could kind of help us with transparency on those issues, as a neighborhood, we are really wanting to work with you guys. We're not trying to fight. We don't want to battle. We want all of our kids to be in the best possible situation, and I think that we're all in agreement on that.
right.
Okay, here's the difficulty, and I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. The difficulty with transparency is we can throw numbers out there, but without a lot of background information on how those numbers are calculated, all it's going to do is cause more confusion. It's like this is a complex problem, and so oftentimes if you just dump numbers or dump statistics out there, all it does is cause more problems.
No, I understand that,
and
but
just
you know,
the same issue you had when you said it, we were having all kinds of problems trying to figure out capacity. It would cause even more issues if we just said, okay, here's all the numbers. then you wouldn't know how those numbers were calculated, and then you would question the numbers.
I understand.
Because you wouldn't know how those were determined. We have special programs in many of our schools, and so any of those schools that we have a special program in, it might be special ed, it might be English language learning students, so that's going to change the capacity in a school, so that would skew those numbers. So it might, then if someone looks at the numbers in that school and it doesn't appear what you think it should say, then it's, oh, well, they're hiding space there because there's really more space there, but there's not, because we have special programs there.
Understood.
So that's the difficulty, and that's why we have this committee that has all this information in front of them and had taken hours and hours and hours and hours.
Sure, which is,
to
I
wade
understand
through
that.
that data. And that's
Yeah.
the difficulty of just dumping it out for public use,
But
because
that's
then it's more
also why we don't
confusing.
understand why a decision was changed when less than a month. If we know how much time it takes to make that decision in the first place, how then was it just completely turned on its ear in less than a month? Because we do recognize and appreciate the complexity of those numbers.
And I understand, and I appreciate your confusion.
Absolutely.
Can I address that? When we just voted to accept their proposal, and then we went to public forums, and we had different Q&As, and then the committee took all that feedback, and that's how they came up with the new maps, and took all the different things into consideration. So it wasn't that we took it and approved it and it was set in stone last time.
Right.
We took it to accept that as a proposal, and then the proposal was put out, and that's where all the public forums were taking place. And then the committee took all that information that they gained and regrouped, and that's what they came up with.
So was it just, did you just feel like
We're over time.
the time?
We need to wrap up, because just in respect to.
Can I ask this one last question? Is that okay? Do you feel like that enough time was taken in that interim to make such a big decision after it was unanimous? That's the question that I'm going to leave with.
I don't know if I can answer that.
That's okay. That's general question then to the group. Thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate you.
Thank you for your time.
Next speaker, Mark, is it Gorley? Gorley? Sorry about that.
Thank you. You must have been reading my notebook because I had a lot of the same questions. So I'm not going to rehash everything that was just said. I will bring it down to a personal level. I live in Indian Springs neighborhood area in Park. I grew up there, so I went to Childers Middle School when I was a second class to go all 3 years. So those neighborhoods have been going to Childers since the mid-'80s. My daughter now goes, and she is a sixth grader. She's become very attached to her band director and also her choir director. I know next year she would have different teachers, but those two teachers have become very special to her because they teach her what she loves, and it's music. My question would be, and I would ask that you all reconsider, Indian Springs, just west of Elm, have been going to Childers for, like I said, since the mid-'80s. Now it seems like west of Elm is going to go to Oliver, which is 3.5 miles away from where we live, and Childers is 1.5 miles. Now I know when I was going to school, during basketball practice or the occasional detention, I would be able to walk home. And in this situation where if my daughter had to stay after school for a rehearsal or whatever, she wouldn't have that opportunity to walk home. So, and also transportation. She rides a bus. Logic dictates that it is closer for her to go to Childers than it is for her to run all the way to 4 miles, 3.5, 4 miles to Oliver. So I would ask that be reconsidered, that the south end of Broken Arrow be looked at again because it looked like in the second one that you all approved in January, or that you brought forth in January, just dealt with Childers and Oliver. It left Oneida Ridge alone. So we'd like that to be reconsidered, maybe instead of a north-south split, an east-west split. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Darren Lindsay.
Thank you. I stand before you tonight. I'm an alumni of Broken Arrow Schools. I went there my entire educational time. class of 95. I'm older than I look. I'm also a parent of a kindergartner who started this year at Highland Park. And as a resident of a neighborhood called Turtle Creek at Midway, which I know there was a couple people in the December meeting that got up and talked. And I would just like to thank the committee and the board for taking probably all the public comments from our neighborhood specifically into account and keeping us in the Highland Park and Oneida Ridge school. And I think a lot of the main concern with the people in our neighborhood was that the distance was quite a bit further. We were looking at basically 3 times further for elementary 16 and over 6 times further for Childers, which rough math equaled about 1,300 miles more per school year to the elementary school, and over 26,000 or 2,600 to Childers, which can be a pretty big economic burden for our neighborhood, which is probably considered lower middle class. It's a starter home community. But again, I just want to thank the committee and the board for taking into advisement public comments, and we hope that we get to stay at Highland Park. No offense to the new principal. If we do go there, I'm sure it'll be great. But just thank you for listening to us and taking all of our needs and concerns and questions under advisement. Thank you.
Next speaker, Ms. Lois Breedlove.
This is my second time around. I've been in front of the board many, many years ago arguing different statements, serving as a BA PTA council president, as Oklahoma PTA president. But now I'm a grandmother raising 6 grandchildren, and I'm here to speak for them. And they're just as important as the older ones were. We're in section 409, and when the committee studied and prepared their proposal, they left that little half section of that square mile, 509, going to Highland Park, which is we're part of Forest Ridge. But since the public comments, and by the way, I didn't show up for any public comments because I was happy with the new boundaries that they proposed for fall of 2020. So they didn't hear me say, I like it left, 509 left, going to Highland Park. They heard people who had other issues. And I respect that, that's great. But little old 509 right here, just half of that has been going to Highland Park from the get-go. And I'd like to see them continue to go. That will make my life as a grandparent raising 6 grandchildren a lot easier. I'm getting older and I don't have nearly as much energy as I used to have. So that little bit would help me out so much. So I wish you would just take care of that. Now, I know that there are other people in this room that are concerned about the little half section of 509. If you are, would you raise your hands back there, please? Those parents, I think they're probably mostly parents, want to see their kids stay at Highland Park, stay with the Forest Ridge addition. That's the only section of Forest Ridge that I can tell, unless I'm a little out of it, and sometimes I am, that is not going to Highland Park. That's just that little half-mile section of 509 that's been going there. So I appeal to you on this particular area to reconsider, to put it back after it was taken off of the committee's long-range planning. And I want to emphasize, I've served on these long-range planning committees. Nothing is more discouraging than to have spent months researching, looking over reports, going over this and that and everything else, and getting feedback, to have unanimous vote, and then all of a sudden they've got to change what they put heart and soul in for months. I've been there. You talk about not want to serve on any voluntary committees anymore. That's what will happen. So I encourage you to support the committee's first proposal because I think it's a fair one. And that doesn't mean it's perfect either. And I don't have anything to say about the middle school issues because we're still going to Anita Ridge. That's great. But for me personally, and I know a lot of other people in 509, we would appreciate it so much if that half-mile section would go back in for Highland Park and keep Forest Ridge together. I appreciate every one of you and your time. I know how much time it takes and how you agonize over decisions that sometimes you're between the rock and the proverbial hard place. So thank you for everything you do. Thank you for the quality that we have at Broken Arrow Schools. I'm glad my kids and my grandkids have been a part of that, and I'm glad to be a part of that. So may God guide you in making the right decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank all of our speakers and appreciate the positive dialogue. And just remember, we are all Broken Arrow Tigers, and our committee is all Broken Arrow Tigers. Our board is Broken Arrow Tigers. We're going to do the very, very best we can to have the very best plan to take care of our students and our community, however this shakes out. So I think it's, me personally, I think it's important that Dr. Dunlap and her leadership team with conversations of the committee get that perfect plan and bring it back to us, and so we can let everyone know and get things going with that.
Well, and the reality is, we're not going to make everyone happy. I mean, it's impossible. And we'll look at all the information. We'll look at all the feedback. Just rest assured that as a mother of 2 kids, they've changed schools 3 times, and so far no one's in prison. They've done okay. So we realize that it's going to be difficult. Whoever does have to move, but someone will have to move. We will take all of your input in under advisement, but at the end of the day, we'll have to make those tough decisions. It will be difficult, but at the end of the day, also, we've got these great leaders like Mr. Hutchins that is going to lead our brand new school, and within 2 weeks, those students make friends, and it's their teacher is their favorite teacher they've ever had, and they've made friends that they can't live without. So we will survive this, and I love hearing the stories about how much everyone loves Broken Arrow Schools, because honestly, we love Broken Arrow Schools too. Our heart is here, and you hear us oftentimes saying this is home. It is home, and what a great problem to have when we have parents coming out in numbers like this, that they're so passionate about their school that they don't want to leave. That's a great problem to have. So for that, we thank you. We appreciate you having this passion for your schools. So we will review all of this, and very soon we'll bring a recommendation to the board for them to take a vote. And you will know that when it happens. So thank you very, very much.
Anyone else? Anything?
Yeah, I'd like to just speak. We are listening to you when you email us, and we're taking the considerations. We're not experts into this, so we represent you, and we do. We listen to what your feedback is from this stuff, and we're trying to do the best that we can to make your child successful here, period. You know, our primary responsibility is to make sure your child is taken care of, and I can assure you we're going to do that. So, you know, there might be some inconvenience because they're going to have to travel to a different school, but we're going to still provide the best opportunity for your child to succeed. So, you know, we welcome the feedback. There's things on here, you know, it's great that you guys are able to come here, but there's some people that aren't. And so we've got to look into that consideration. There's different parts of town where they might be at work. They might not be able to have parents come and represent their kids and still having the same issues. So, you know, we want to take some time, but we want to make this decision pretty quick and get it going so people can make adjustments, because it's coming. I mean, it is. So, but no one's up here trying to be a dictator over this thing, and this is the way it is. We're listening. So give us the feedback, send us the emails, but give some justification. Help us make these decisions. We can't make the decisions because you just don't like it. Give us a reason why, how we can fix it, what your thoughts are. We are reading it, and we're trying to make the best decision possible. So.
And I'd just like to kind of coattail off of that. I think an important piece to kind of reiterate is that, you know, we depend upon the process. And this process is something that, you know, we've used that is, you know, using the committee. And so it does bode well with getting all the information considered, getting all the feedback. And then, the thing that I think that I feel very comfortable about, that goes into the decision-making proposals and things like that, is that there's always consideration for what is the effect on classroom size, what is the effect on child transportation to and from, how long are they on the bus, what is the effect of the capacity in the schools and things like that. And then collectively, we also take into consideration and know that across Broken Arrow School District, there are programs that are in all the schools, and that's where I know I find comfort as well too, is knowing that, again, they are the Broken Arrow public school system, that we know they're going to get a great education. Yes, it's tough to change schools. My children went through that as well. And I was in your shoes up here before I served on the board, talking to the board, talking about why I wanted it one way or the other, why I would propose it one way or the other. But again, I think the important factor that I wanted to just mention was that I do feel that all the things that we've talked about tonight and all the things that the feedback I have received are getting considered. And, we will make a proposal, or there will be a proposal given to us, and we'll make a decision on that. But I think also, as we grow and looking at how our district is positioned, I hate to say it, but we'll go through this again at some point in time, just because you see the development of all the stuff that's taken place in the Wagner County District, where I represent as well too. And there's huge growth out there. And you look at where all of our schools are, unfortunately, that's a matter of fact. But please feel that we will definitely get back with you all as quickly as we can with see the recommendations and proposals. Thank you all again for the ones that spoke. Appreciate it.
Okay, next item, number 9. Ms. Bergwall.
Good evening. I do have a couple of our committee members here to present the latest recommendation to you after the Long Range Planning Committee met. So hopefully we can answer some of those questions that the public speakers had. One of the questions was how did this happen? And this happened with taking the public comments from the maps that were presented in December. Our committee heard those concerns, drove roads again themselves, and listened to those concerns. And so they came up with another plan that they felt might address some of those concerns, and not just the concerns of those that were in the east, but those that were in other parts of the district as well. So I'll let Tammy and Tira speak to you a little bit about that recommendation, and then try to field any other questions you may have.
Hello, I'm Tammy McCartney, and I just want to start out by saying I really appreciated being part of this process. It's been hard. A lot of the public comments were not kind, but knowing how we got to the decisions we made, and I'm proud of the maps we came up with. And so I want to put that out there, that it's not going to be everybody who's happy, but these are things we worked very hard and considered everybody's feedback. If we had not changed the map, we'd have people say, you didn't listen to public comment. You told us you would hear us, but you didn't. And so we listened, and we're still listening. We're not voting on it. You're not voting on it tonight. And so I think it's important to realize that this is part of a process, and this is a transition. So I'm up here tonight to talk about how we changed the map from the original proposal to our new proposal based on feedback. So, and I'm just going to try and speak loudly so everybody can hear me. So on the new elementary map after public comment, we changed the boundary right here for Childers to be, the turnpike. And so you can see that Brighton Village, that was one of the neighborhoods that got taken out of Spring Creek, is back there now. We changed Oakcrest into 2 blocks, which was not our ideal plan. We wanted it to be contiguous, but the population of these 2 squares made it so that Oakcrest had a good population, and that they will still be going to Childers. We also changed Leisure Park here, and let's see, we changed the boundary here for Highland Park, based on the concerns of the members of the district out this way who had to drive all the way down to Childers and to Elementary 16. So we heard those concerns. With middle school, you can see that one of the big concerns is that the folks that were here in this square were not able to go to Oneida Ridge. They were going over to Childers. So now the boundary is right here with Highway 51, and the folks will be staying at Highland Park who are in this area. Does that cover it? Okay.
Thank you again for letting us talk and be part of this process. It has been a pleasure. I would do it 100% again. Hopefully not too soon. But I have thoroughly enjoyed the process of it, getting to know what the process is and being a big part of the district planning. We did listen. As you know, after we recommended our first map, we did have a survey. Well, the district had a survey that went out. There were lots of talk amongst committee members and the public, as well as the online forum. We said we would listen, and we did. We've driven the district separately. We came together and really found that there were some valid concerns for the pathway of travel, specifically from the Highland Park area down to Childers. There wasn't really an easy, contiguous way to get there. So we did want to address that. We felt that making some changes probably would be in the best interest of the district. And that's why we went from unanimously supporting our original map to, hey, maybe we need to make some changes. We don't know everything, and so we needed some additional information, and we took that into account.
I want to mention, we also unanimously support this map.
Yes.
Or this map. The new one after public comment. That also received a unanimous vote.
So we're taking as much information as we can to make sure that our classroom sizes are in line with Broken Arrow's vision. We're trying to keep neighborhood children together. There are some neighborhoods that are actively growing and growing very fastly, and will outgrow, if we altered boundaries, they would outgrow that very quickly. So again, I've loved being part of this process. Our entire committee does recommend the altered map.
I think I'd like to just kind of remind the committee and the room that, or the board in the room, that the committee spent a lot of time looking at the data. The data that they looked at was enrollment numbers, capacities of sites, and location of various facilities. And in the revised recommendation, they moved some kids and moved others back. So when you move some of those sections out east back into Highland Park, then they had to move others out. And in the case of 509, there are 98 elementary kids in that half of a section, and so that helped balance those kids that got moved back in. So I know Tammy said a lot of times in December, it really becomes all about the numbers as we look at class sizes and capacities of our buildings, and then just where our kids are. We don't have that map up here tonight, but that scatter graph of where our population centers are and where we're growing becomes very important as you try to balance. The change from Oliver to Childers Middle School, some of those kids did get flipped. It was because Oliver wasn't full enough. They had 33% capacity remaining, and that's why we made some of those changes. The committee made some of those changes in that western part of the district, which helps balance us kind of across the district so that not one school is too full. We'll continue to get that way as we continue to grow and before we can open additional classrooms. So, do you have any other questions?
Ms. Bergwell, it seems like a lot of the difficulty is around pulling from the east side of our district over to the west. And a lot of the feedback, or the difficulty in the feedback, has been, why are you pulling us from the east all the way over to the west side? Can you explain why we're having to pull over?
So we have always, as a community, we've really congregated along Elm Street for many, many years. If you look at our 27 school sites, 3/4 of them are along Elm, and that includes the Freshman Academy and the high school. Well, I guess the high school is closer to Lynn Lane and County Line, but 3 of our 5 middle schools sit between Elm and Lynn Lane. 3 of our 5 middle schools sit between Elm and Lynn Lane. When you live clear east, if Oneida gets full, which it has, you have to come west. You have to come further west than Lynn Lane, because 3 of the next middle schools are there. Now, Childers is further south, and Centennial's clear to almost to the northern boundaries, and Sequoia sits right in the middle. Not as easy a path into Sequoia as into Childers. So it's an interesting problem to have, but it's because our population has always grown around the Elm corridor. The schools were developed along there. Now that we're growing out east, we're trying to, build schools out east, which we've done with Highland Park and Oneida, and the new schools really out east as well. But we are obviously going to need more, and we have to continue to use the classrooms that we have west, which they're also full. So it's an interesting puzzle. If you like jigsaw puzzles, it's kind of a fun one, but it is also emotional. And, I also want to remind the board that many of the committee members moved their own children, because after looking at the data, they realized, okay, this is how we balance. And, we're not trying to do anything to a community or a neighborhood, but it's just what happens is, as a district is growing, we have some growing pains.
I think that's an important statement that, to kind of highlight is you had mentioned talking about balance and the equity across the district and the schools. That's an important piece that does talk to classroom sizes and things. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, like I said, with Oliver having 33% capacity remaining, we need to fill that school. We need to use those classrooms. We want Oliver to have the same size science classes as Oneida Ridge does. We also want all of our schools to have the same kind of programming. How great would it be that everybody could receive any kind of special programming that they needed in their home site? But as it is, we kind of move some kids around the district, trying to fill some buildings and not overcrowd others. I think it's good to expose our children all to the same opportunities and also the same programs. So we are trying to balance, and every time we redraw the lines, we have to look at where has our population grown, what buildings have less capacity, more capacity, and not all of our buildings are the same size. Childers is our smallest middle school, and all the elementaries feeding into it are growing, and they were our largest growth sites. That scared the committee a little bit, scares me a little bit, because it's going to be 3 or 4 years before we'll be looking at the boundaries again, and we don't really want to bring portable buildings back in. I'm not sure the city would let us do that. So that's what we mean when we say equity, class size and programming to be the same across the district.
Thank you.
Ms. Bergwell, you get the committee and you brought us maps in December and these tonight. Is it all or nothing, or is there a possibility of a combination of maps to match another map, or is this just this is it, or this is the proposal, or? Those were the 2 sets of maps the committee came up, and you heard them say that the committee voted unanimously on both of them, and then listened to public comments and made another. It's always at the pleasure of the board. If they'd like to look at some different combinations or some other tweaks, that we can do that as well.
Michelle, can you explain a lot of the emails and concerns that I'm getting is the elementaries out east, Timber Ridge and Highland Park. How's the capacity going to be affected with the new school in this map as far as what it is this year versus what's going to be next year?
At Highland Park?
Both of them.
At Highland Park, really with both maps, and I'm trying to remember the numbers off the top of my head, Highland Park was going to look at having a capacity remaining under the first recommendation in December at 29%, and at this recommendation at 27% capacity remaining. They're a little bit different because we put some kids back in there from the sections 524, 523, and 522 back into Highland Park, so then we had to take others out. What it did allow us to do was balance Timber Ridge, that was with the December recommendation being at 33% capacity remaining. That capacity, I think now under the new maps, would be 18% capacity remaining, and it allowed us to address some of the issues that the public brought up about splitting the Arrow Springs neighborhood. They are currently in Leisure Park, and we had split them between Oak Crest and Leisure Park in the January maps. That shows keeping them together and starts to balance those really the elementary schools from Timber Ridge south, balancing them a little bit differently from what the December map showed.
The December elementary map, you made the comment, it was approved unanimously also back in December?
That's correct, by the committee.
And it still would be today if that was an option?
I'm sure that they would support it, yes. You know, the
I know the work y'all put in, and that was,
yeah.
you know, we're not trying to say you didn't do your job. You did a great job.
No offense would be taken.
We went with the either option. Okay.
They were very thoughtful, and I was very proud of the committee of the work they did. We met every 2 weeks from October through now, and it wasn't just an hour meeting. We were there till 9, 10 o'clock at night a lot of those nights. And then they spent time outside in their outside of the meetings in their groups and driving roads and crunching data. There's lots and lots of data that we threw at them of enrollment numbers, capacities, all those things. So I was very proud of the work they did, and I think both sets of map are they have their merits. They both have pros and cons. There is no perfect map, I am convinced, because I've tried to draw one several times, and there is no perfect map, but I think we do start to balance our sites and provide equity.
So Timber Ridge currently is sitting at 33% capacity remaining.
Correct.
And then it'll go to 18%. So,
yes.
But it was, Linwood is the only one that had more capacity left over. So Timber Ridge was actually it had plenty of room left. It
Correct.
wasn't overcrowded whatsoever.
And you know, there's been some comments about it being completely full, and what I would say is the data we use is the data of those kids that live in those boundaries, in those attendance boundaries. And currently at Timber Ridge, there's some special programs there that drive their enrollment numbers up, and it's always up to the instructional folks as to whether or not those programs stay. But when you're talking about people or kids that live in those attendance boundaries, they have 33% capacity remaining.
Well, I want to thank the committee.
Amen.
Like you said, it isn't an impossible task to get 100% agreement on what you all were trying to do. I've sat in on some of those in the past. Give you a headache for sure. They're very emotional. You all have children involved in it as well. But I want to thank you for all your effort and all your time and hard work. And we'll get through it, and we'll be okay. So, but I want to thank you all the committee.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Next item will be the general consent items 11 through 39.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
Motion second, please call the roll.
Ms. Roulette?
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, number 40, Mr. Ptolomeo.
Good evening, President Allen, Dr. Dunlop, members of the board. I'm here to present to you guys the furniture, the office furniture first for elementary school 16. That's all the office suite, the conference tables, the teacher furniture, the task chairs, all of that stuff. Okay. We purchased it off of Union's HON contract that they bid out every year, and it's from L&M Office Furniture.
Questions, discussion?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
Motion second, please call the roll.
Ms. Roulette?
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, Mr. Ptolomeo, 41.
I'm here to accept the student furniture for elementary 16. This is from Kruger International, KI. This one's a little more complicated. We did a furniture RFQ that you guys accepted back in November. On it, we had a menu of selections. We met with about 4 or 5 instructional people, and we didn't look at price. We looked at what we wanted in the classrooms, and we chose marker board tables, some different things like that, and a lot of those things at different companies are additional cost. So when they selected the marker board tables, that put KI in the top spot or lowest responsible bidder. So I'm asking for you guys to approve KI for the student furniture.
Discussion or questions?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and second, please call the roll.
Miss Roulette,
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Mr. Majors.
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next item, 42, Ms. Bergwell.
Well, this is one that I have been waiting for a while. I don't know if you guys know it or not, but my kids attend Childers Middle School, and we're finally going to get to do a nice little remodel there. The bids looked really good last week, and so we're excited to bring to you tonight approval for the construction bids at Childers Middle School. What we're going to do there is we are actually going to add 2 storm shelters. We had to kind of split it because, of course, it's an existing building, but 2 storm shelters that will accommodate the entire student population. One of them will be 4 science labs, and one of them will be the new choir room. And then because the bids look so good, you see there that we're accepting some alternates. So we're going to be replacing some windows and giving the media center a new upgrade and the cafeteria a new upgrade. We're actually going to figure out a way to use that mini commons finally and make it part of the cafeteria. And so we're excited to bring those bids to you tonight and ask for your approval.
It's exciting.
Questions or discussion?
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second that motion.
Motion and second, please call the roll.
Miss Roulette,
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Mr. Majors.
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Next item, 43, Ms. Bergwell.
Well, we're having so much fun at Childers. We want to do the same thing at Oliver. That's also on phase 2 of our bond to add an addition to Oliver and build some capacity there. So we're asking you to approve tonight Boynton Williams and Associates Architects to start the design of that project. And Miss Dana Boynton's in the back there, ready to get to work.
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second that motion.
Motion and second, please call the roll.
Miss Roulette,
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Mr. Majors.
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Ms. Bergwell, tell them not to screw it up.
All right.
All right, next item, 44, Ms. Peterson.
Yes. I'm here to present for your approval the purchase of math curriculum for 3rd through 5th grade. All of this curriculum is actually for next year, but we had some textbook funds left over, and they cut us a quite nice break on shipping. So this price of $85,000 should cover all 3 of those grade levels.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Questions, discussion?
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second, please call the roll.
Miss Roulette,
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Mr. Majors.
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Enoff, number 45.
Good evening. The financial statements as of the end of December 2019. Certainly happy to go over any of that data with the board, but what I would like to discuss tonight is the midterm adjustment that we did receive for our state aid allocation. I think it's important for the board and our community to hear how that affected Broken Arrow. In total, our allocation was adjusted to $56.9 million. This was a decrease of 1% of our allocation for $581,000.
So we lost 581?
Correct.
We need those people back in here to hear that. And the news. Why is the news not on? Come on, let's get that on the news. Sorry.
The loss of the allocation was primarily due to reallocation of funds through the formula. Basically, an increase of enrollment in some of our virtual charter schools and the reallocation of those funds between our traditional K-12 schools and the charter schools. Most of the districts in the Tulsa County area lost between 1% to 4%. So us losing 1%, I was pleasantly happy that we were on the lower end of that loss. In total, it was an $11.21 per pupil reduction, and despite us growing about 366 students.
That was kind of an important thing there, that, I mean, we actually grew in the number of students, but yet lost money being allocated to us. That was kind of a surprise, but I mean, I know it is what it is and it's out of your all's control, but
Right.
To grow and then lose money was a bit kind of alarming a little bit from the
And so,
perspective of calculation.
so to clarify the problem, it's actually twofold. the first problem is that the way that virtual school charters are funded, that midterm allocation is different from the way we are funded. They should be funded the same way we are, where they get their chunk of money at the beginning, but because they get a big chunk at midterm, it's inequitable. And so then they get this big chunk of money midterm, and then that pulls from the money that we plan on getting. And that makes it hard for us to plan. So that's the first problem. The second problem is the inequity in the way that they are funded. They, and not to disparage, but they don't have the same overhead costs that brick and mortar have. And so that's a debate that we continue to have with our state legislators, in that it's just not fair to have the same factor placed on a virtual student that you would on a brick and mortar student. You just don't have the overhead costs of having to have, counselors and operational costs and busing and cafeteria and all those things that you don't really think about because they just happen. But when you have a virtual charter, you don't have all those overhead costs.
The largest part of our budget, as you know, are our salaries and benefits. And we just celebrated a historic accomplishment in Broken Arrow by giving a very sizable increase in our certified salary schedule, which we are now bound to continue to, in good faith, move forward with. And that is the concerning part for our traditional K-12 schools, that we are held to this salary schedule and the virtual charters are not. And so, if we continue to go down this path of putting money into the formula, taking out of the formula, setting salary schedules, long-term it's not going to be sustainable. And schools that don't have a fund balance and don't have other plans in place will be facing some very difficult decisions.
Well, and I'll say that even more aggressively. We cannot sustain this as a state. So what will happen is some of the smaller districts that do not have a fund balance will go under. I mean, they'll fail. And we cannot keep down this path. It's not going to work. So something will have to change legislatively, or we'll have some small districts that will fail.
But it ended up with the current funding formula, with how they're giving the lion's share of money for virtual at semester. I mean, I would think that would entice recruiting and things like that to pump up the numbers.
That's what we have heard. Yes. Yeah. And of course, that's what is being investigated right now. So.
Are there any more questions I can answer about the adjustment?
No, thank you.
So moving quickly to the December data, the ad valorem dollars, you will see that reflected in next month's report, which besides state aid are the two biggest revenue collectors that we get in general fund. We have received Wagner County already, and that is up a little bit. So we are very fortunate in Broken Arrow that our property value continues to remain strong to carry us through these adjustments, if you will, and we're very thankful that our parents and our voter base continue to support us through bond issues as well, and so we will be fine through this. I'm not up here to try and panic anyone or to send anyone into a tailspin, but I think it is important to know that at the end of last year's legislative session, we were promised additional operational dollars, and we spent those dollars in good faith for our students today, and it is very difficult to run a $100 million budget with cut after cut after cut effectively.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Looking at our expenditures for general fund, again, salaries and benefits are two biggest components, and we will continue to watch those as the year progresses. Building fund, a little bit of an uptick with some of our purchase property expenditures, and it's hard to believe we're halfway through the school year. May I answer any more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item.
My next item is to ask the board to determine a meeting date for a special board meeting in February to sell our next round of bond funds in the amount of $15.2 million. This goes to fund our annual allocations, and the dates that our financial advisor has given us are February 25th, 26th, or 27th. That's a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And just as a reminder, that special meeting is at noon, so we can do it while the markets are open and we can get bids during that time.
What were those dates?
The 25th, 26th, or 27th of February.
How does that look for everyone right now currently?
I'm open.
27th is best for me, but I'm available. I can make it happen any of those days.
And it's around noon time? Is that
Mhm.
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
I'm good with the 27th.
I'll make it work.
Does it work?
I can try and make it work, sure.
Is there a better date? Or is that?
I can make it work.
Okay.
We just need 3.
Oh, we just need-
Yeah.
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 27.
So we need a recommendation to that effect, if that's going to be the February 27th.
Make a recommendation that we choose February 27th as the date for having the special board meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Got a motion, second, please call the roll.
Miss Roulette,
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Next item, Ms. Dohan.
I'm sure you'll send something.
Yeah, please do.
Good evening. I'm here to give the treasurer's report at the end of December. Our cash balances show amount of $34,302,000 in assets for the district. Including in this number are $25,690,000 in investments. Our collateral pledged to the district totals $25,844,000. Deposits that require collateral total $13,100,000, leaving an available balance of collateral to the district of $12,744,000. Any questions?
No question.
I'll go on to the activity funds.
Okay.
Receipts at the end of December totaled $2,942,000. Expenditures totaled $2,143,000, leaving a balance in the activity funds of $4,398,000.
Questions, discussion? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, 49, Ms. Metavalis.
Good evening. Submitted for your approval tonight are the encumbrances for December 5th through January 9th, totaling $562,220.56.
Questions or discussion?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second, please call the roll.
Miss Roulette,
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Next item, Ms. Metavalis, number 50.
The change order reports for December 5th through January 8th reflect a decrease of $11,134.12. Would recommend your approval on those change orders.
Make motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second, please call the roll.
Miss Roulette,
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Mr. Majors.
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes, thank you. Next item is new business. We have none. Next item, 52, is to move to executive session.
Make a motion to move to executive session.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second, please call the roll.
Miss Roulette,
Yes.
Mr. Cockrell,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes, thank you all.